It's like someone. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
No, I kind of wanted to bring up what was funny is so I've been going city with my girlfriend quite a bit now. So we're getting to learn more and more stuff about each other, and this pescatarian thing, man, is taking its toll on me. Like I almost decided to go flexitarian, and
Is that what religion she is? So if you guys get more serious, is one of you gonna convert?
no, I feel like it'll
classes.
just be post practice, but no, asshole.
I'm always gonna think you're saying Presbyterian. I'm sorry. It's just that's gonna happen. That regardless of what it is, because I actually don't know what it actually is that you do.
Just call me a hippie.
I could do that.
That's like the short answer that everybody results to here. So
the flannel kind of already called that out. Okay, sure, that works too.
But I was going somewhere with this, but I was talking about like the animals that I do miss eating, and like one of them is
that sounds
quail.
hilarious in and of itself. It's pretty funny.
You didn't even talk about the preparation, the execution of said animal. Just like I just want to eat that animal.
Yeah, I just like Homer Simpson just walking up and taking like a big bite out of it.
I know I shouldn't eat thee, but sacrilegious.
Like I just miss eating that fucking animal, and it's quail. This is the only animal I've ever hunted in my life. When I first shot a gun, I shot a gun and pointed it at a fucking quail.
That's a Californian thing to do. I went quail hunting. we hunt deer.
Oh, dude,
deer.
Worst.
That's it.
Oh,
that's
deer's the worst.
That's all that's fucking around over here is deer.
We accidentally hit deer with our cars. That's like the closest I'll ever get to hunting.
I accidentally hit deer. Fucking deer, like, you'd be surprised if you don't hit a deer at least once a week, probably. That's just...
They're just like, they have no regard for themselves. Like, they have to. Like, evolution otherwise would have given them something within the last but the last 100 years or so, give or take, in which we've had fucking motor vehicles, and the fact that we have nailed them, like, fucking head on and taken their life, I would assume that, like, evolution would just step in at some point and give them some sort of extra sense. Hell, it's like it's done it for everything else. Like, a fucking giraffe's tongue is blue, so that way it doesn't get sunburnt by the sun when it's out there eating. Like, that's evolution. Yeah, exactly. There's so many different things that, like, animals have done or biology has corrected for animals.
I think deer's evolution is they don't get fucked up as bad when they get hit by a car. Like, it doesn't do as much damage to your car now if you hit a deer.
Let's talk about weird animal things, though, shall we? Did you know that wait, hold on, what is it? Is it I don't know if it's a marmot or not. Some kind of rodent has cubic poop. It's it poops in cubes.
What's a marmot?
A marmot's like a little monkey.
Okay, no, then something else. What's that stupid animal's name? I think it starts with an M. Some kind of animal poops in cubes. I didn't know that until very recently, and allegedly it's because they don't want it to, like, topple off of stuff, so that when it comes down to marking their territory or something, they're like, yeah, there's my shit.
They kind of just like make a log cabin out of shit with their cube shit.
Yeah, they're very industrious. Like, dude, that's recycling. That's going green before any of us fucking went green. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on.
Shit cabins.
Oh, it's right on the tip of my tongue. It's not a marmot. It's a maybe it was a marmot. I don't know. Some sort of marsupial. Okay? So, like, there's like koalas, right? And then there's something else like a koala that I think starts
kangaroo.
with M. No, it's
Jackal.
not a kangaroo. No.
Hawk.
Way off from fucking... Jackal? Did you say jackal at one point?
Jackal. What?
Sure.
Come on. I've forgotten. It's okay. It'll come to me eventually.
What's the creepy one with the long arms like this? Like the...
Sloth?
Yeah.
Alright.
That too, maybe. Focus. Okay.
Yeah, dude.
So what were we talking about again?
Well, no,
you were talking like he brought up blue tongues on giraffes.
He was bringing up eating animals originally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a wombat's poop is square.
Really? And you know what's funny is like wombats are like the weird fucking animal that you never knew existed until
you discovered they had cubic poop.
Well, yeah, but like
Fern Gully, bitches.
A, has Looney Tunes have they appeared as a character on Merry Melodies or Looney Tunes, or B, has Sega found a way to make them a Sonic the Hedgehog character? That's when you know any of these fucking weird animals exist.
A wombat was in Fern Gully, right? Am I wrong? That was in Fern Gully.
It might have been.
Wombat.
Tim Curry played Evil Smoke. Dude, everything was in Fern Gully.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know, James Cameron did like a high def remake of it. It was I hear it's quite popular. No, a wombat was in the.
Are you talking about Avatar just now?
Yeah,
I didn't get the reference for a minute there. It took me a second. I'm sorry.
Good. Yeah. So no, wombats. I believe they first appeared in the cartoon Tasmania. Like that fucking shitty like animated sitcom of like Taz and his original conceived family, and then they're all on the literal island of Tasmania.
I really hated the theme song to that show.
Welcome to Tasmania. That's where I first learned of a wombat. But anyway, none of that's important. I was just I was going into this. This all had a point. I talked to her about how I think the worst animal that I've ever eaten in my life, and it came across too, it was bear. And I ate bear, and like apparently that's a really strange thing to like have eaten in your life at one point.
Was
I was dating. No, it was terrible. It was like bad. It's kind of like if imagine jerky but tougher to eat, and imagine eating a rubber tire. Just tire from your car, like the tread and everything, like the threadbare.
So gross.
Yeah, it's horrible. Like I don't know, I can't imagine. Yeah, and this chick that I was dating a long time ago, her Russian family just fucking hunted it and ate it, made soup and stew and shit out of it, and like I don't know, it was adventurous, and I ate it. It was the worst fucking thing ever. I've
eaten seal before.
That seems illegal.
That is the strange thing. Yeah, that is definitely like where okay, so
no, like it's a common thing up here.
Are you fucking with us?
No, they've got I think they still have the seal hunt in Newfoundland. Yeah, it's a common thing.
Canada,
there's a legitimate festival where they club seals to death and eat them?
Whoa.
The seal
are part of a very exclusive club.
Yeah. It's not the R&B singer seal.
No. It should say seal. Canada's deer, apparently.
No, that's moose.
Do you guys hit deer with your cars all the time, or hit seals with your car all the time?
No, it's the moose we got to be careful of because they'll total your car. They'll total your car and walk away from it.
Oh fuck yeah, they would. It's a goddamn moose.
Yeah,
moose kill more people annually than any other animal in Canada.
God damn. That's insane. I fucking love that place more and more. I love those statistics, man. I wish I lived in a place like that.
You know what else Canada is really famous for?
God damn, good segue. That's a really good wrestling. I like that. Good job.
And
well played, sir.
welcome to our second edition of Press Pause Video. And we've come out of the woodwork. We've got our sights set on talking about the history of wrestling video games because we've been teasing at it for a while, but it's strange because I don't think there's any other sport or athletic pastime or some sort of contest of athleticism like wrestling that has such a rich history with video games, honestly. I think the big divide between that I found in researching this topic before we bring it to discussion was the fact that there are a lot of fictional wrestling games, like a shitload of fictional wrestling games. Then there are a shitload of licensed wrestling games.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's just other there are even licenses dabbling into wrestling games, like Simpsons Wrestling. That's a fucking video game.
Oh yeah, that
real
one.
video game.
It's a really bad video game, but we'll get into that, I'm sure.
You honestly brought up a good point, because I think the reason why wrestling and video games are so synonymous together, like tied together, is because it kind of came into the mainstream at the same time together. Wrestling really picked up as more of an entertainment, and not just like a carny, go to the carnival, go see wrestling kind of mentality.
Strongman event. Yeah.
Well, wrestling from its origins originated as a carnival event. It was to make money off people passing this as legitimate, bout between two people. It was an actual fight between two people. It wasn't staged, choreographed, or pre-planned. It was like a legitimate fight, and it was given to the audience as a legitimate fight. But that was when it was in the carnivals, and then it got legitimized in the late 70s, early 80s, when Vince McMahon Sr. sold off parts of world wrestling or worldwide wrestling entertainment, or whatever it was called back then, to his son Vince. Vince took it, and that's when he started going kind of mainstream with it, and he had the vision of making it more than just territorial wrestling. He wanted to make it like a global thing. And that's kind of the same thing with video games. Video games didn't really pick up as a mainstream thing until, I would say, probably really late 70s, early 80s. So they kind of came together at the same time. And maybe it's not a coincidence that's why it's such an integral part of video games now, is because they kind of came up at the same time. They're still growing as a form of entertainment even now at about the same time.
And it's strange, too, because the three biggest forces, I would say, in video game development, majorly the two being, North America, U.S., and Japan, were also the pioneers in bringing video games to the spotlight. In that case, I mean, the first, I believe, WWF game was on the Commodore 64. It was either that or it was an old DOS game. It was even before the NES was a thing. Hell, while there isn't a the thing I think I find interesting, though, is when Western video games first came to fruition, there weren't really any wrestling games there that I know of on the Atari. It wasn't until the NES and the Sega Master System, and then the Commodore 64 where it picked up. I mean, everybody got in on it. Nintendo had its own first party pro wrestling game. Fucking a winner is you. And then around that time, WWF was the big lead promotion, but there were quite a few other. I want to say there were quite a few other games that came out aside from the WWF games that came out early. I mean, it's strange because at that time too, even though wrestling was such a nuanced thing, they also had a lot of other pop culture influences. I think what really hit that up too was the rock and roll wrestling connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
The WWF. But then that led to Kinnikuman and Ultimate Kinnikuman, and then that came out in the form of Muscle.
Yeah.
Ultimate Muscle. Yeah. Or whatever it's called here in the States.
Well, Ultimate Muscle was a sort of a reinvention of the series. Yeah, Muscle was the original, and actually they turned it into some acronym, and I forget totally what it was, but it's many Ultimates little.
Yeah, they made it a shitty acronym.
Yeah, but, some acronym, but yeah, it was Kinnikuman is what it was.
What's funny though is Ultimate Muscle did have its own game though for the GameCube.
Yeah,
and it's a fucking amazing game because it used the same developer that did the awesome N64 wrestling games.
It was done by Ukes, was it?
No. God damn it. He was a character in the game too. Do you remember? Goddamn, I can't believe I don't remember the developer. Nope, I can't remember it.
It'll come to us.
Yeah, it's like AKI or something like that. Something. Is that what it is? That's
it's the same people who did WCW, NWO,
and the Def Jam games and stuff like that. Okay.
Which is weird. I think so. Like the one thing that I always find interesting with video games is just like I mentioned pro wrestling, which was Nintendo, and I think that was the only foray that like Nintendo took into wrestling video games. But I mean, there was like a shitload of them. Like every Japanese publisher, or even major publisher, had its own wrestling variant. I mean, Tecmo, of course, but Tecmo had that variant on all sports. But aside from Tecmo, there was Natsume wrestling that was on Super NES. There was Saturday Night Slam Masters.
Yeah, that game's awesome.
Yeah.
There was SNK's 3-Count Bout.
Did the main event ever come out to consoles, or was that strictly just an arcade game?
Yeah, and that's another thing too. I think aside from it, because there was main event, and then there was Superstars. I want to say there was like 3 WWF arcades that were really big, and then there was Royal Rumble.
Main event wasn't even a WWE game. That was just like a wrestling game that looked a lot like a WWE game, but it wasn't WWE. It was just some made-up ass wrestlers.
Some made-up ass wrestlers.
The main event, I think it was called, if I'm not mistaken.
And it's strange too, because like with all of these different games that came out, not a single one of them really play the same. It's so strange, because like with wrestling itself is also one of those weird athletic contests that kind of changes the rules as it goes along, and new shit always gets added to it. So I feel like it's definitely one of the few things that can have that kind of flexibility to kind of like play around with the rules, or whatever fucking rules you'd have. But like Muscle, for example, was very straightforward view of the ring. You went around, you beat the shit out of each other, and I think it just involved like beating the shit out of each other until like.
But every now and again, like there'd be a special attack that would sort of come in from the side of the screen, and if you got it, you got like a special move, and it would just decimate your opponent.
Yeah, but I think that it was all stamina based though, right?
It was
like,
yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
Got the special move, that was the end, really.
Yeah, I think at some point, like what was, I think what like video games really help lend or otherwise accomplish for video games is it kind of already brought like the mysticism and illusion of its like physicality, and it turned it into like an all-out fucking fight fest, like just beating it like. I don't know. I feel like anytime like you see a wrestling video game in action, even just done for the spirit and sport of it, like it doesn't surprise me to see someone immediately go for some sort of foreign object or weapon like out from the crowd, or just like find a way to. And that stuff was like early and prevalent within like the earliest games. Like I want to say that. WWF WrestleMania actually featured folding chairs that you're able to get, and that was in the 16-bit era. I don't think there was anything NES or Master System-wise that kind of capitalized on that. I mean, how well do you think those games have aged?
I bet not great. The NES and Genesis ones, not so much. Super Nintendo ones and up definitely still can.
Even the PC Engine ones.
Now.
Like the PC Engine ones, like there was a company called Human, and Human was responsible for some of the more popular wrestling games throughout the 16-bit era.
Behind Fire Pro.
Yeah, exactly. Right, but I don't know. I've got Fire Pro 3, and I don't think it holds up especially well, to be honest.
Fire Pro, definitely now, if you play a Fire Pro wrestling game, it's not really... I never thought Fire Pro Wrestling was a fun game to play. I just thought that the amount of customization you could do is the real reason why that game was so well received. Because you could take your customized wrestlers, move sets. It was almost like a simulation game more than an actual wrestling game. Like it was meant to reduplicate rosters of wrestlers that you wanted to see in a game, but were never in a game or when we're in a different game.
I appreciated that they had like 40 characters in it. Like, don't get me wrong, it was some of their names were amazing.
But the mechanics in Fire Pro Wrestling is hard.
It's rough.
Game's harder than shit to play sometimes.
It is a very rough game, yeah.
Can I play like?
Didn't you Didn't you play a Fire Pro game on like Xbox Live Arcade back at like PAX East 2011? Like,
yeah, it was the fucking Avatar game.
But does that emulate what Fire Pro was though, or is it far worse? Or
Not
far
really.
Better?
Yeah, it's way worse. Unfortunately, it's like if like Nintendo made a Mii game and said, "Hey, it's Mii wrestling." Like that would be what this was for the most part.
Call it Wrestle Me or something.
I mean, essentially that's what it is. It's you take your avatar and you get to wrestle with it against other avatars. It was kind of a disappointment. I mean, it was a disappointment.
Yeah.
If it could have been anything like I had imagined it would have been, I would have been so thrilled to play it. But to be honest, they haven't made a really good wrestling game, in my opinion, since once they went from SmackDown versus Raw to what it is now with the 2K series, or even when it was just WWE12 and WWE13 before 2K got involved. Like the SmackDown versus Raw games were fun because it let you do the ridiculous stuff, like you could fight in Times Square and jump off of buildings and do stupid shit. and once it got to be more realistic and more about the simulation, is just when I kind of stopped really getting into them. It just didn't really seem like it was that fun anymore. And they weren't really much of a party game anymore. I think wrestling games are one of those few games that you could always play as like a party game experience. Like it's, anyone could pick it up and play it. Like that's why N64 games are so popular.
I think to that end, the ultimate system for wrestling games had to be the N64.
Agreed, absolutely. I mean, it was like GoldenEye. Like you could just pick up that game, like WCW World Tour or WCW versus NWO Revenge, or even like WrestleMania 2000, No Mercy. Any of those games you could pick up and play, and like everyone around you got into it. Like it was one of those games that broke down. Like, well, I don't really play video games, but I'll play this one with my buddies. It was like Mario Kart or a game like that.
It was definitely one of those. It was definitely a defining moment from when the genre itself. Because funny enough, even though we talk about how storied and how rich like the genre had been up until that point, I mean, it was still very nuanced. Wrestling itself was still very nuanced. It was still one of those things that even then people were ashamed to admit in public that they enjoyed. It was a guilty pleasure, in every regard, and it kind of reflected like that tide that changed when wrestling went into the mainstream, and there were the rival promotions of WCW and WWF at the time, to where like these superstars were getting like national recognition. Like, I mean, you had Hogan, who has always been recognized, but then like Sting, and then sooner or later like WWF, like I don't remember how much, but they threw a fat money hat. I mean, the fattest money hat at Acumen to get like access to that engine. And that engine, it speaks of testament too. That engine's been used, like you mentioned, it was used in Ultimate Muscle, but it's also been used in like the GameCube wrestling games too.
Are you sure about that? Because I am a big fan of Day of Reckoning, and I don't think it was the same developer.
It wasn't Day of Reckoning. I want to say it was No Mercy.
No Mercy was on 64. Yeah, No Mercy was the last N64 game they did, and then when it went to GameCube, it was Day of Reckoning 1 and 2. And then, the really bad Xbox game, Raw, and I think there was a Raw 2, I think. And then, of course, on PSD, you had SmackDown versus Raw.
So it's Aki Corporation and the Asmic Ace Entertainment development studio, and yeah, they provided quite a few because that engine went around between WWF, and there was rumored that like before ECW was going under, because even ECW had like 3 games under its belt. And
unfortunately, it was made by Acclaim, which Acclaim had made the wrestling games from WWE before. I think N64 games, no, Acclaim.
No, they did Attitude.
They did. You're right. They did. Acclaim did the ECW game, and then I think when ECW went under, they did the WWE games on like PS1, because you had that transition from like N64 to PS2, and those wrestling games on PS1 weren't all that great until it got to be SmackDown, the very first SmackDown, like the. God.
Oh God! I don't think there's like not a single good 32-bit wrestling game. Like
not really. No.
Well, there's WCW Mayhem, and then there was Thunder.
Yeah, I remember Thunder. I remember you played as the Disco Inferno stage. Everyone did the YMCA dance. Like just fucking just because even the wrestlers did just because. Man.
They all
Good stuff.
but like it did like there was one thing that I will definitely credit for WCW Thunder though. I think it was the only wrestling game at the time that actually allowed you to not only leave the ring but go backstage, and you can fight back there.
That's why SmackDown vs. Raw was one of the best series of wrestling games, because the backstage brawls, the hardcore matches, all the different kind of weapons you could use. Like I mentioned, some of the best parts were when you went into Madison Square Garden, like went outside to New York City, and you could just run and jump off buildings and do ridiculously stupid shit the whole time. It was so good. It was amazing.
So, at one point, do you think that, like, because here's the thing, I feel like the big rat race towards achieving, like, the perfect wrestling video game, because, I mean, there's definitely been a lot of room for improvement, but there's also been those really awkward periods. Like, the PlayStation era, I think, definitely had the weakest showcase for wrestling games. Even then, like, the Saturn, like, that was purely Japanese ground, and, like, that was mostly filled with, like, Fire Pro Wrestling and
weird FMV games, like...
Oh, God, yeah, the FMV game was also in the PCFX.
PCFX, I was going to say, like, I thought it was PCFX for sure, but...
That women's wrestling game with...
there's another one on, like... Yeah.
That'd be kind
Yeah.
of cool.
The FMV, it's a really bad game.
Oh my God, yeah.
I'm gonna track that down. I'm gonna find that one.
But yeah, and you know what's funny though is that like almost every single console, like every major console, has had some sort of wrestling presence on it. Fuck, even the N-Gage has a WWE game.
Oh my God, yeah, that's right. Oh.
Yeah, it's I don't want to say it's WWE Attitude, but it's WWE
it's
something.
One of them, yeah. It is.
That's the best wrestling game right there.
Yeah.
WWE something.
Did the Virtual Boy have one?
No, I doubt it. I doubt
I
it.
think it would only be Japanese. Funny enough, I mean, I kind of want to talk about it too, like just how intrinsic wrestling has been to video games. Do you guys know that there was a planned Mario wrestling game that was supposed to come out on the Wii? It was going to be called Super Mario Spikers, and it was being developed by Next Level, the same people who did the Punch-Out remake. Well, not remake, but reboot. There's no footage of it. But yeah, I can see, like, it's
Spikers, though, I mean, that sort of sounds like volleyball to me.
Well, Spikers probably mean like a pile driver kind of move or something like that, like getting spiked on your head, you know.
And it's so strange because like that kind of highlights like the one thing, because let's look at like the current offering or the current climate for wrestling and just wrestling video games in general. Andrew mentioned like the whole party game thing, much like wrestling. Video games have also transitioned into being like this very family-oriented pastime and activity, and like that's a real testament to where like Mario of all things. I mean, granted, we have Smash Brothers, and that's basically that was the biggest fear. Like they wanted to do this, but like considering that they already had like Smash Brothers under their belt, they kind of felt like it would
might be a little too similar.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're kind of in this day and age where like physical combat is like, and like, man, like it's funny too, because for as tame as people criticize wrestling to be compared to back in the day, I think really the context and subject matter of wrestling is definitely tamer, but the fucking violence and shit going on is so much harder. Like all the kicks to the fucking head and face alone are always like a concussion. Bound to happen. It's just strange that like I've noticed, and I want to hear your guys' thoughts. I mean, much like EA, I believe WWE has kind of cornered any sort of wrestling software. I mean, they're like wrestling is almost it's being syndicated into a yearly release from 2K.
Yeah.
So I always find it strange. Like I want to say that Fire Pro Wrestling, dude, is the newest wrestling game to come out aside from that isn't WWE related.
So there's been a few. I know for sure. Like I remember.
Oh, you know what? No,
TNA,
he's right. He's
TNA,
right.
TNA Impact came out, and that was something made by Midway right before Midway closed up. They tried making a TNA Impact, right. And it was actually like, and I felt so bad because that TNA game actually had potential because they tried to recapture the essence of what the N64 games were like, and to an extent, the way you controlled the characters did kind of work like N64 wrestling games, but it failed in every other level, like the actual like mechanics of the game, the clipping. Like that's always been a bad thing with wrestling games is how the characters will clip through each other all the time and the environments, and that had a ton of that shit going on. The hit detection was terrible. Yeah.
That's always the that's the defining feature of a wrestling game is how good the collision detection is, be it with sprites or with 3D models, right? So
because unfortunately, I think in a wrestling game, in terms of just the mechanics alone, any other sports game, you're only going to have a athlete making contact with either the ball or maybe like one other character or one other player. In wrestling, like you have to have one player be able to reach out and grab or pull like multiple limbs, different parts of the ring, the ropes, turnbuckle. Like there's so much going on there. It's hard to keep it all straight. And I feel like the newest wrestling game, 2K15, got all that right, but it's the only thing they got right. The hit detection was pretty good and it looked good, but it wasn't fun to play.
Yeah.
It's just like they can't seem to get it right. Like I would almost take flawed mechanics for a fun wrestling game at this point, and I don't think they really care about that anymore. I think now they want it to be as true and close to the real thing as they possibly can be. But that's all that 2K really wants to do, any sports game.
But I don't know if I can agree with that because like there has been like some liberties taken. I mean, the most recent one is WWE Immortals, which was done by NetherRealm, and that's not a wrestling game at all. But
nope, it's strictly just taking the characters and putting them into a different kind of genre of game. Same with Supercard. It's wrestlers, but it's not a wrestling game. It's a collectible card battle game. It's just it's taking wrestlers who are mainstream now and putting them in different games. Like you might almost see like a rhythm game coming up soon.
It's kind of like saying
with
that
like WWE theme songs or something, for all I know.
It's sort of like Hotel Mario in a lot of ways, I guess.
that is wow. That's a reference.
I forgot Hotel Mario even existed.
Oh, you were a better person for it.
Yeah, probably. Probably for the best.
We just went to a dark place.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, aside from that, there's WWE All Stars, which was a like hyper centralized cartoon game.
Just kind of like a spiritual successor to, was it the WWF WrestleMania?
The arcade game?
The arcade game, yes. That game. That was fun.
That was developed by Midway, and
it was.
I feel like full circle, like, because what's funny is I remember Main Event now, and Main Event was weird because it was just like Pit Fighter, where it had digitized graphics, and that was like its big fucking draw. It was just like, oh, it looks so real. Oh man, it couldn't be further from the truth.
I take a full FMV wrestling game now. I think that'd work out pretty well.
You're lying to yourself.
What's funny is there's been a independent wrestling game development for PC for the last 7-8 years called Pro Wrestling X, and like there's been some random like I don't know, some teasers and whatnot. It's just weird that that's been like a very passionate like independent project. My question to you is like there's a rich history of wrestling, and we can go into it at some point, and we've talked about like the incarnations. It's transformed into a party game that like people will play, just like kart racing was never a fucking huge thing, but now Mario Kart helped kind of stabilize that. I'm kind of curious to hear what you guys think about like, even though there are technically not a whole lot of competition, because we're kind of keeping the scope here small. I mean, in Japan, there's like a shitload of New Japan Pro Wrestling games. There's like, I think the 360 alone's been hit with like, I don't know, 5 or 6 wrestling games. And then even you mentioned Nintendo 64. Japan has its own community of like the Nintendo 64 wrestling games called the Virtual Pro games.
Oh, man.
I don't know if you guys, yeah. There's like this whole different culture from it, and I feel like, you know, with a lot of the directions that the WWE product is taking as of late, it's kind of like, you know, intrinsically making other wrestling appealing again. Like I don't see TNA hopping into the video game business anytime soon because they're just doing what they can to stay afloat.
Yeah, they can barely make enough money to have a TV show right now, so yeah, no video game for them, I'm sure.
No, but and I remember that game. It's weird. It was definitely one of those weird hit or miss games, and it fucking came out on everything too. Like it was out on everything.
What about the backyard wrestling games? You remember those?
Oh fuck, dude, come on.
I had to bring it up.
Yeah.
I
completely forgot about those.
I wanted to forget those.
Yeah.
Any game that has Ice in it shouldn't exist. Should be.
You know what's funny? But there are other, like I said, aside from Simpsons Wrestling, the Def Jam Vendetta games were out too, and they sort of did their own thing. Fire Pro Wrestling came out back on PS2, and I think there's a Japanese exclusive wrestling game on PlayStation 3 in Japan.
I think we got Fire Pro on the Game Boy Advance out here too.
Oh yeah, no, we did. Yeah. I feel like at this point, like, and it's sad to say, but like the bastion for like, I think otherwise risky, creative, or different wrestling games is Japan at this point. And yeah, and like I don't know exactly how many of them will even see. I know a lot of them are region free.
Yeah, I mean that's the good news, right? But
see, you know, I think if anything, okay, so the one thing I think we haven't really talked about yet in this episode is like wrestling games have stood the test of time because they've done something to incorporate or otherwise improve or upgrade in some way, shape, or form to keep up with the times, or to just offer more, to pull more horsepower out of the hardware that they're running on. I mean, I think now, especially with the WWE 2K games, in the last two games especially, considering that they're just like fucking monsters in the regard of, like, I don't know, those things are like fucking bug-filled messes. Like, we couldn't even review the newest one because it just like they're almost unfinished. They're all at the same time they're all building upon the same engine. They're kind of doing what Madden does and NBA Live does, and I feel like that's going to hurt the WWE video game name if they don't do something new or different. What do you guys think needs to be or could be done with wrestling at this point? Because I think it's kind of achieved everything. But like, I don't know, man. Like, what do you think is like territory that we haven't crossed yet? I mean,
maybe you know, getting a game that's as approachable and playable as like a Smash Brothers, but more technical, like a Fire Pro, perhaps.
And see, I
think approachability, I think, is going to be the biggest thing here, right? Because
I feel like they've already nailed that, though. I mean, in this current time, like, almost everybody's down with wrestling. It's in some way, shape, or form. There are degrees of it. There are the just like fucking video games. There are the casuals, and then there are the like, yeah, fucking. You know, it's funny that you went in that direction, Sarah. My direction, and you guys can all look at me like I'm a fucking asshole, but I would like it to take like a sort of Telltale vibe to it. I kind of want there to be like this more of like this like really fleshed out story mode that like
a ridiculous amount of exposition.
Yeah, for certain characters, because that's all, dude. Like the big thing about wrestling that people like I failed myself to understand until like, you know, a very few opportune moments really give me the chance to really engross myself in it. And you know, you guys can laugh at it, but it's the truth. Pro wrestling is one of the last fucking arts of theater that we have left, aside from Broadway and other shit. Like, to me, pro wrestling is very much it possesses a lot of the same elements of appeal that the Muppet Show did, to where you knew it was a show, you knew this was an event, and everything was going on, but at the same time, you got to have this like behind the scenes look at everything that was supposed to put on the show. But in the case of the show itself, it's the fiction that's within the show itself. It's a fourth wall thing, and not a lot of things can do that. I mean, it's just like, no other sport will you see like a basketball team score a fucking dunk on the opposite hoop and then rip off their jersey and you'll fucking reveal that they were a member of the other team this whole time. Like, shit like that is very specific to wrestling.
That'd be amazing, actually.
I have a genre of game that would work perfect for wrestling that has not been done yet. And I would play it because it's kind of like the digitalized version of what's happening right now when people do like fantasy wrestling. When they take their character and they put in like, okay, this week he's wrestling this guy, this week he's wrestling that guy. I say wrestling MMO. Because because your guild could be a faction, like a stable in wrestling. You could have someone that's training you as a mentor who's like a wrestling legend or a current superstar. You could be like the clean-cut wrestler. You could be the dirty, guy that uses all the cheap tricks like the, eye rake and all that kind of stuff. And you could build your character around what kind of style you see fit. And you can learn new moves, new abilities. You could do heel turns. Like I just see so much potential in that. It sounds stupid, but I think it would work. And you kind of engross yourself into that character and kind of make that character make your own federations. Like, the possibilities are kind of just like, you could do so much with that. And now that I say it, I just kind of wish that actually existed now, because I would play it. It'd be the only MMO I'd be super into.
Well, I'm going to say it too. Wrestling shmup, but it's already happened. Aicho Aniki.
So, yeah, it's true. It's true.
In a lot of ways.
But why can't we take these characters from Cho Aniki and put them in an actual wrestling game? Like, yes, they've been in shmups, but they've never been in an actual wrestling game. Can we get like a guest appearance or something happening soon?
They have their own
unlockable characters. Do they really? Oh, you're right. They do. You're right.
They do. Yeah. It was on SNES.
Yeah.
They've also got a strategy game too, which is on the WonderSwan.
That is fucking ridiculous.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah. It's completely ridiculous.
That is more ridiculous than Hotel Mario. I'm like fucking just blowing out there right the fuck now. Yep. It's funny that you kind of went in that direction, Andrew, with like MMO, as far as wrestling, because I want to say there's this game that's being developed, I want to say by Chroma Studios, and I'm trying to remember it. It is a game that is like, it's very similar in the fact that you are managing and producing your own like Tokusai and Super Sendai show. I'll remember the name of it.
I know what you're talking about. That's
Chroma Squad, right?
Yeah, Chroma Squad.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So very much in that.
It's made by people that made Knights of Pen and Paper.
Yeah, and like very, very much in the same. I don't know why I said Chroma Studios. See, fucking Jesus. But yeah, very much in that same like vein, to where you have to set up the stage, the production, hire and outsource like certain certain powers that be that help produce and put together the production that you're trying to throw. I feel like that should also be an element in wrestling, because at this point, and like I'm glad it's being acknowledged, but everybody understands the scripted, like booked nature of wrestling. And now that it's an open secret. So I feel like I think there's a game that can definitely capitalize that. Because you mentioned fantasy wrestling, I would like there to be like something where you can arrange a promotion, you can arrange cross promotional deals, or even like manage avenue, like something like that would be like excellent. Because like that
kind of like a game dev story, but for like booking a wrestling federation.
Yeah.
Kind of like that, yeah. Mm-hmm. That'd be cool.
I feel like that. Yeah, that's like something that like wrestling video games haven't really kind of climbed into as of yet. But like, I don't know, wrestling video games they've not only stood the test of time, but for the most part they're in a mostly comfortable state. much for the fact that like aside from like all of the other cultures that still thrive and are currently satiated with wrestling games. I mean, the WWE, as long as they're still around, they're gonna have some sort of presence in video games.
Yeah.
But what do you guys think? I mean, we've kind of thrown out our own ideas, but like, do you think at some point it's gonna wane? Like, I feel like at some point, like, wrestling will carry on, but like maybe because like video games used to be so intrinsic to like even then, like, I mean, think of Botchamania. Fuck, like Botchamania, all of its music is pulling from a video game.
Yeah, no, it's definitely the culture. Like, I think fans of wrestling now are the same people that play video games, watch videos on the internet. You know, it's and more kids and more young adults are growing up with it in their lives. So it feels almost like, and you can see it now too, like wrestling going into mobile gaming. Like, it's going into the gaming that is suitable for like what's popular and what's around. So I guess whatever kind of gaming is popular then is what wrestling will try to pursue. Actual console releases, that might be just depending on 2K. I feel like 2K did baseball for a long time, and then once baseball was not really a good investment for them anymore, they dropped it. So wrestling will probably be a big investment for a long while, but if they ever decide that it wasn't worth making a game for anymore and they did it annually like they have been, I don't know. They probably would drop it or do something else. I just kind of want to see wrestling take a year break and come back out in 2 years and see what happens then.
I think we're already kind of seeing the way that it's going to go, though. I mean, we've got the annualized series through 2K, and all of the real innovation and the really crazy cool stuff is going to happen in Japan, where it's huge anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's like, I know it's big in the United States, but I don't think it's nearly as big as it is in Japan.
Wrestling in Japan is revered. Like, the wrestlers are treated like they're rock stars. And it's just, you don't see that in wrestling here in the States. Like, there comes an amount of respect to the Japanese wrestlers and that whole culture. I guess,
and they can take it to the extremes that it needs to thrive in a video game sort of market. But I mean, where they've got so much out there, we've got the one series now, and that's really all there is to it.
The wrestling game here is the Madden. It's the same kind of concept.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny is like even New Japan Pro, they're actually and they're not only like taking these risks, but I mean they're coming out with their own subscription service. Like they already have.
And they're actually trying to become more of a household name in the States through Global Force Wrestling, which is Jeff Jarrett's current promotion. He's trying to bring New Japan Pro Wrestling to the States to where you could watch it on TV. You don't have to like import or stream or do anything like that. Like, you could actually watch it live. Their first pay-per-view, which was Wrestle Kingdom 9, was available here in the States on American pay-per-view. I don't know how well it did, but I know it was an awesome card. So hopefully if it did well.
Yeah, I'm hearing it did really well. And not only that, JR is commentating on it, which is even...
JR and Matt Stryker did the commentary, which was actually pretty decent. So
yeah, because like Matt Stryker is also doing the commentary for Lucha Underground.
Correct.
So I don't know if they're just gonna have like some sort of joint. Would
Lucha Underground get a game if they picked up as big as? I think Lucha Underground is a great promotion. It's unfortunate because it's only on a channel that only a few people get. So I don't.
But it's doing really well. It's just and it's also weird because
it's a good product too. It's really good wrestling to watch.
Yeah, it's incredible wrestling, and then as far as the fictionalized portions of it, it's so fucking self-aware that it's hyper dramatized and theatrical to the point where it's like
on purpose. I mean,
yeah, on purpose to like it's a Spanish telenovela. Like it goes from like amazing wrestling to like Univision with like fucking like soap opera angles and like effects that make it like I basically try to sell it like it is a dramatized piece of fiction, but it's great.
How do we get this far without mentioning like luchador style wrestling?
Because like here's the thing: in video games, I don't think they had that large of a presence. Like, it's weird too because in Canadian culture, the big like the wrestling scene was all done like on it had like a big presence on DOS. I'm trying to forget.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember like the one game that was actually like really big, and even then like all the WWF games. Like I think there was even like an arcade game that was like done that way. I want to say it was featured in that fucking Bret Hart documentary where it's like, oh, Wrestling with Shadows.
Yeah.
That he had in his fucking stupid Bret Hart mansion. But yeah, I don't think it's going anywhere, but I think much like how we spent this episode talking about how symbiotic and how similar the changing and adaptation that of times that video games and wrestling kind of had with like not only with one another but within themselves. I mean, video games aren't stagnant, but there's definitely like this new appreciation for things that are smaller, old, like and trying something new. And as far as WWE is concerned, I mean, we mentioned all these different promotions because we're watching hell. Say what you will, and I've had the casual arguments with Andrew here and there, but like TNA is like finally watchable. It's good. It's actually like they're going in a direction. They're going in a direction that's like appealable, and I think they're gonna be fine. Lucha Underground's amazing. I mean, all of these things we are aware of, not just for the fact that we're wrestling fans, but because it's like everything that's kind of the direction that WWE is going in general is kind of putting me off to like getting involved with anything. And it's funny too because this is the last thing I kind of want to touch on. Even though they've mentioned at several points that they're not in direct competition with each other in any way, UFC had a really hard time trying to like get into the video game scene, and I just found it funny that now they have their own, and like they're
they hit their stride on the Dreamcast though. Let's be real.
I don't know, man. The UFC games, like the last one from EA, was received fairly well.
The last one, but everything in between, not so much.
I remember those games. UFC, and they had like some title. It wasn't like a numbered yearly thing. It was like
UFC Pride. And...
yeah, it was like : Strike Down or something stupid like that.
Yeah, and then
Takedown. It was UFC Takedown, I think, actually. If I'm
yeah.
And
then there are the MMA games too that are just MMA.
Those are terrible. Like,
yes.
I don't know how many people accidentally bought Supremacy MMA because they thought it was UFC, and then they bought it like, oh fuck, what is this? What is this? This horrible game.
That cover is perhaps the douchiest looking cover of all time.
Just a fucking bro, just like. He's on the cover, he's like.
Yeah.
That guy, like, fuck off, dude.
Yeah.
I want to punch that motherfucker. Jesus.
Well, I personally, aside from like douchey bros with tribal tattoos, like fucking staking up the UFC cover scene, I kind of would like to see a little bit more done with wrestling games. I mean, we're like I said, we're hitting a Madden era. Hell, they're even like. Within the last 4 years, it made big deals over who would have done the cover of the 2K games, much like a Madden sort of accolade. So I'm kind of hoping that like there's something different or there's some sort of direction, or even then, like I kind of feel like with all this social integration that WWE is attempting to go for with its audience, as far as like the network and its social pages. That like they do go in a mobile direction, like Andrew was mentioning earlier. I mean, Supercard and even Immortals is okay, but like I wouldn't mind like I said, a choose your own. I would like fuck it. I'll be out right there and say it. Like I would love a Telltale ass game for wrestling in general, or even WWE, something of that nature. I think that would be something that's really cool, something that isn't explored as much.
Yeah, something you wouldn't expect, but it could work out probably pretty well, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean,
I'd play it. Fuck, I'd play almost any wrestling game if you put it in front of me. I even played that we were talking about earlier, Sarah. I played that god awful Fire Pro Wrestling game on Xbox 360.
You were so stoked for that too.
I really was.
It was such a letdown.
Yep. Got the rug pulled out from underneath me as soon as I started playing.
I was playing Trenched at the time, but dude, like I could hear your heart breaking from across the booth.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, Fire Pro's coming to 360. It's gonna be what? Oh god. Yeah,
God,
why? Fighting. Why did you do this?
Swallowed a piece of your soul.
It did. Goddamn it.
Well, you haven't played the FMV wrestling game.
Yes, that's a whole new level of awful. Yeah.
I'll find it.
Well, I'll have to do a because I actually like I could get my hands on it.
If you have
do a play on it.
Yes.
Nice.
Oh my god, yes.
I'm so down.
Oh no. Yeah, until then, I don't think there's much else that we can really discuss about this topic other than that, like, wrestling video games are awesome. They've been awesome for the last 20 years. But now they're just like, eh. But like, I don't know. I'd like to do. There's some New Japan games and Virtual Pro games that we do plan on doing some plays of. So you guys will check that out. Until then, yeah, I've got really nothing much else to say other than the fact that, like, you know, fucking, I will say this, and for every asshole that wants to correct me, wrestling is definitely not something that should be in a sports category. It's its own fucking genre, and it's earned it. So there you go.
Agreed. And then I have a quick question before we end. If you could pick your favorite, what would it be?
Oh god, my favorite wrestling game?
Yeah.
And see, well, like, because, alright, we're going to have to break this down.
Because mine was more like a gut reaction thing, because obviously you assume it's going to be the N64 games, but it's actually not. Mine is SmackDown vs. Raw, Here Comes the Pain. My favorite one.
Okay, so, like, I had two... So I have, like, two answers for it, because I was going to say that SmackDown vs. Raw 2011 is really good. I really like that one. But that's like my favorite licensed one. And then my favorite non-licensed one, dude, Saturday Night Slam Masters.
Yeah,
all the way.
I just remember playing Here Comes the Pain all the time. It was like our party game, you know? Like I just played tons of that with my friends, and it's just like it was a mainstay for like a couple years. Even after the new one had come out, we'd still go back and play that one. You know, that's hard to do, is going back and playing an older wrestling game when the new ones come out.
Yeah.
Like usually that's a pretty good sign if you go back to the previous one with the older roster. Yeah, that's not too bad.
You know what's funny with, I don't know if I can agree with that entirely. Maybe it's because it's the cynical wrestling fan in me now, but I feel like the current state of affairs and like this nostalgia for vintage wrestling from the 90s and even like 80s, I feel like that alone is a big factor. It's a big driving factor to like kind of push people to go back and play those games. And yeah, dude, all the 64 games hold up really well. All of them. Like, except for Attitude and Mayhem, then everything that was not developed by that fucking studio.
Yep. they need to just go fucking find those guys, because they haven't made a game in forever. I don't know if they're even still around. Just get those guys back.
They're working on New Japan games now.
Even now?
New Japan Pro. Like, and you know what's funny is that like the last two New Japan Pro games had like the Bullet Club and even had like fucking Tensai from like Albert
I'm fucking looking those up right now.
Yeah. You know what I would also like to, now that like we've kind of extended this a bit further because it's coming into its own, and because I don't know why I didn't say anything earlier with the shirt that you're wearing. Well, why the fuck doesn't, like, they're bringing NXT competitors as DLC to 2K, but I would love NXT to have its own fucking thing.
They might. I mean, Triple H is kind of promoting NXT as almost its own brand. Like, it's not even the minor league to the WWE anymore. It's like they're doing like tours. They're, you know, doing like live shows. Yeah, they were just in
California recently. We went to that house show. That house show was fucking brutal though, and it made me ashamed of like the crowds there, because like I'm not a fan of him, and even though I personally, I won't lie, I admit to the sentiment. Dude, like there was a crowd chant of "Please retire" to Big Show, and I'm like, that poor guy, dude. Like he's so old, like he wants to do other things, I'm sure, and he doesn't even know how to do them anymore. Wrestling's all he knows.
But you know, the crowds, man, fuck, the crowds are going to be terrible. They're like the wrestling crowds are about as bad as game fans. Like they can be kind of terrible.
Oh my god, yeah.
They can be terrible and opinionated sometimes, and yeah, it's not great. Not at all.
But yeah, I would love to see an NXT game with Sarah. What are your favorite wrestling games?
Well, I've actually got it right here, and I'm gonna go for the oldie but goodie. There's a lot of nostalgia factor in this. It's Kinnikuman Man Muscle Tag Match.
Oh boy.
For the Famicom. It was released here as Muscle. But yeah, it's just been a family favorite, really. We've always played this when I was younger, so yeah. I picked this up at PAX. It was like $5, so I couldn't say no.
I really do like Tecmo Tag Team Wrestling. And like it was weird too because like there was that and then there was Ring King and then Ring King was like a weird game. Yeah, because it was
more boxing though. Let's be honest.
Yeah, it was boxing, but like it was everybody played for the box. Everybody played it because it was fucking weird and it looks like the dudes were fucking getting their like junk sucked in the corner.
God.
Like just fucking mouth on.
That's the wrestling game everyone wants. Let's be honest.
Yeah. So, anyway, I think that's about it. I mean, we haven't really talked about too much yet. I know we've been teasing at it, but we're gonna have House Show come out soon. That's gonna be a sister podcast to Press Pause Radio. It's gonna be PBR Presents House Show. That's gonna be our wrestling podcast, and there's a lot of topics that we have to toss around. Like me personally, I think that like aside from the video game industry, there's one other industry that wrestling shares an unintentional relationship to in terms of the way, like they're very, very, very similar, but at the same time, it's funny because now they want nothing to do with each other, and at one point, they actually shared somewhat of a relationship with each other in the 90s, and that's the adult film industry. Pornography.
Well, wait, who shared it?
Of course, that wouldn't, that doesn't surprise me.
Are you talking about when Shawn Michaels posed for Playgirl? Oh, yeah, right. And then all the divas posed for Playboy, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, and China, as well as, China was in adult films and did that for a while.
She was no longer a wrestler with WWE after that, though. That was after she had left WWE.
Yeah, but I mean, there are things. But see, like, there's a lot of material to discuss. So I would love to throw it. I believe me, I've got a lot of other stuff, and plus we got some other stuff we can talk about, like WrestleMania predictions and
definitely,
like definitely. Which
that's coming up soon.
Why would we even? Yeah, it is. But why would we even bother? Like WrestleMania predictions.
Cena wins. LOL.
Yeah.
Reigns wins. LOL. Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of a small part of me. Oh God. I forgot what I don't know. There's a small part of me that wants Undertaker to interfere with Sting in Triple H's match.
It's a possibility. You know, I mean, they can make that feud go for an entire year, and I'd watch every single Monday if I knew they were feuding and like they did it for a whole year until next year's Mania. I'd watch that.
I don't know. I don't even think the Undertaker knows he's feuding with Bray Wyatt right now. Like Bray Wyatt's carrying that whole thing on his back.
Yeah, he sees himself on like the promo posters for the event. He's like, "Ah, shit, I'm wrestling in this now."
Yeah.
How did that happen?
How did that happen?
Anyway. Poor Taker.
All right. Well, this has been another edition of Press Pause Video. I'm Georgie Boy Zax.
Toast and clothesline, or something. I don't know. It was a bad way to end it. Sorry.
And the original Sarah. And I've got nothing snappy to follow up with, so there's that.
Fucking bullshit.
There we go. Now let's get sued by Matthew. We should do that. Let's that'll propel this show.